Arabia, all that you need is the machine and the ink and the paper. And those dum-dums, do we need to continue? Tell me, what would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do to this ummah who have the Quran? And in the Quran, Allah has spoken about money. What will He do to us? When in the Quran there's the dinar, and in the Quran there's the dirham. And so they brought into being a bogus, a fraudulent, a haram international monetary system. But the subject was not taught in the Darul Ulum. So our ulama are entirely innocent of this, even while giving their fatwas. And so here is a bird's eye view of the causes of the oppression, the political and the economic. Having said that, and having commended the Egyptian people and commended the Tunisian people, we must now ask ourselves, why did the Egyptian armed forces respond to the uprising in such a mysteriously docile way? Docile means soft. Perhaps there's more to this than meets the eye. Is it possible that the same conduct of the Egyptian armed forces will be manifested a few months from now when elections are held in Egypt, and for the first time ever a strange thing happened? Normally the Egyptian people vote 99% for whoever it is, you know. But now it's a free and fair election. Why would the Egyptian armed forces give to the Egyptian people an election that will be freer and fairer than the one that anointed Obama and put him in the White House? Is it because the plan is that the Islamic movement should win the election, and that Egypt, a few months from now, would have an Islamic government? Is that the plan? If it is, then we have very interesting things ahead of us. And the Islamic perspective on this subject would want to inquire into those interesting possibilities. For example, Israel has a problem, a major problem, an embarrassment, with a capital E for embarrassment, in Gaza. It's a festering sore for Israel, and she's taking a blow all over the world with her blockade of Gaza, because the Israelis cannot stomach Hamas. And the Gazans are not going to vote for Abbas. Well then, is it possible that it would be in Israel's interest for an Egyptian Islamic government to emerge in Egypt? And while the Egyptians are applauding, Israel is also applauding? Because the Egyptian Islamic government will have to take a position vis-a-vis Gaza. And of course it will have to be one of support for Gaza. Not just humanitarian support. And once the Islamic government in Egypt makes it clear that we support the Gaza Muslims, then you can have a few convenient missiles landing in Israel, and Israel uses that as casus bellum to launch yet another attack on Gaza, this time more ferocious than the one that occurred 2 years ago. And I am asking you, could this provoke, the word is in the Bible, an exodus, and all the Gazans fleeing to Egypt, and no Mubarak there to stop them, and all the Gazans are out of this cage, this misery, and they get freedom in Egypt, they'll be happy to go there? Is it possible? There are those who say, no, the Gazans will not leave Gaza. But when a man is hungry and starving, he'll even worship a stone. And thus they're suffering in Gaza. So is it possible that Israel can solve her problem in Gaza with the wholesale export or exodus of the entire population, maybe a year from now? These are interesting questions to ask. But there's another interesting question to ask. And that is that the Egyptian people and the Tunisian people are suffering in abject poverty and destitution, while some Egyptians are living on the gravy train. The masses would expect an Islamic government to take them out of poverty and destitution. If anything can do it, Islam can do it. And so we will expect an Islamic government in Egypt to address this blistering sore of poverty and destitution and bring relief to the suffering Egyptian masses. But lo and behold, when the Islamic government takes over in Egypt, those who are the masters of the world of riba, the economy based on riba, are able to now, from outside, attack the Egyptian economy. And instead of Egypt coming out of poverty, Egypt sinks into even greater poverty and destitution. Is it possible? Is it possible? You just study the subject of riba and you'll understand, yes, it is possible. And so, the Islamic movement in Egypt would lose credibility. It would be marginalized, and that would be a significant achievement for Israel. Having asked these interesting questions, we now come to the eschatological analysis. It is my opinion that the uprisings in Egypt, in Tunisia, and in other Arab countries is a development that Israel welcomes. Why so? Only Islamic eschatology can make the statement that Israel wants to rule the world. Secular analysis cannot give you that. When they said that all that we want to do is to find a home for a people without a home, a people who are suffering in Europe with the Holocaust, etc. And we only want to find a home for them in Palestine, with which they have historical links. That was a lie. I think it's time for me to introduce you to lies. There are three categories of lies. There are lies, and then there are major lies, and then there is 9/11. So this qualifies as one of the 9/11 lies. They did not want a home for the Jewish people to live free from oppression. They wanted to create a Jewish state that would eventually rule the world. Only Islamic eschatology can give that declaration.